Hi guys, this is Chang from YOLA and welcome to another episode on the IELTS. Today we are going to discuss one of the most anticipated topics, that is do's and don'ts in writing test 1. Right? So if you're going to follow these ground rules, you're going to save yourself from unnecessary words. You ready? 1, 2, 3, here we go. Now talking about the do's, number 1. Do allocate the time to plan your answer. Now, by this I mean I would recommend you're going to spend sometimes, around 3 to 4 minutes to plan your answer. To analyze the graphics and as well as grouping the data. It is wise to spend a couple of minutes making an outline and having a clear structure of what you're going to report. Right? So this really matters because it's going to help you so you don't just have to go back and forth and think about what to write as you go. Okay. Number 2, pay attention to the years and the units of measurement. Now you can look out for these in the horizontal or the vertical axis in line charts or bar graph. So the years are going to help you to choose the right tenses to write, whereas the units are going to make sure that you're going to code the correct data. Number 3, do you paraphrase the question title as much as you can in the introduction? So please remember, if you copy exactly the same from the instructions, chances are you won't be able to get higher than a 5.0 on test achievement. So make sure that you paraphrase using your own words. Number 4, do highlight the key features in the overview. Now remember, the overview is often considered the most critical part in a test 1 response. So if you fail to point out the key features and put them effectively in the overview, you won't be able to get higher than a 7 or above. Number 5, group the data. Now the thing is, the examiner don't want to see you list out all the data from the top to the bottom or from left to the right. What they want to see is your ability to compare and contrast the data based on the similarities and the differences. So make sure that you can categorize them into groups. Alright, so group the data. Number 6, do use specific data to support your description of details. For example, you should write, the sales have soared dramatically by roughly 50% over the given period. Right, so don't just say the figures increase or decrease without giving any specific numbers to illustrate your point. So make sure you include detailed figures. Number 7, vary your trend language. Alright, so don't just say increase or decrease all the time. Alternatives such as surge, soar, or climb or jump. We're going to spice up your language, so try to go for other alternatives instead. Don't just use increase or decrease all the time. Number 8, use academic or formal language. Now, big or small is considered informal. So you may want to use other options to replace big or small, for example, significant or dramatic or massive or tremendous, those sorts of words. Okay. Number 9, vary your grammar structures. Okay, so in order to achieve a high score in the IELTS reading, you should be able to use a mix of simple and complex sentence forms. But having said that, you should be able to make sure that you know what you're doing, because you're going to make mistakes otherwise. Remember, in order to achieve a 7 and above, you should be able to produce frequent error-free sentences. Number 10, use passive voice where appropriate. Now, I'm not going to say that passive voice, you should use passive voice on every occasion. Or I'm not going to say that passive voice is always way much better than active voice. What I'm trying to say is you should use the passive voice where appropriate. All right, and this the reason is using passive voice when it helps you to remove the need to use personal pronouns. For example, I, we, or they. And this is especially true for questions related to diagram or process, right? So instead of writing like this, then they or the people will pack and deliver the final product to the retailers. A better version could be the final product will then be packed and delivered to the retailers. Right? So you can see the difference between the two sentences. The second version just removed the personal pronouns, which is not important, right? So we're just whenever you want to focus and want to emphasize on the kind of actions, so you may want to consider using passive voice instead. Number 11, write in paragraphs. All right, so it's totally fine if you're going to combine the introduction and the overview in one same paragraph, but make sure that you write in different paragraphs. Don't write everything in one big chunk like this. All right, and please remember paragraphing is really essential. And that leads to the next do, which is you should leave an empty line between the paragraphs, right? So between the paragraphs, you are recommended to leave some empty space. This is for the purpose of clarity, so it's going to make it easier for the examiners to follow your writing. Number 13, allow some time to proofread your work. This is going to help you to avoid such basic mistakes related to repeated vocabulary or grammar mistakes and the like. Okay, so spend some time to review and double check your work. Number 14, write at least 150 words. Alright, so this may sound elementary. I know that this sounds really basic, but if you fail to write enough words, if you don't meet the word limit, you will lose points for task achievement for underlined response. And last but not least, write legibly. This doesn't necessarily mean that you have to have beautiful handwriting in admirable calligraphy, and there's just no evidence that shows your score will going to be reduced because of bad handwriting. But make it readable at least. Just put yourself in the examiner's shoes, right, and make their life easy. So make your handwriting readable. Now moving on to the don'ts. So what are some of the things that you shouldn't do in the writing test one? So I would say the number one, don't write the words below or above in your introduction. Right? From time to time, I see a great many of my students, they paraphrase everything in the introduction, but they still keep the words, the chart below or the chart above in their on their writing papers, because actually in your papers there is no chart or no graph below or above. So you just better have that removed. I know this is very minor detail, but it's worth paying attention to. Number 2, never include figures or numbers in the overview. Now remember, your job in the overview is to highlight and point out the key features. So you don't want to include any details or a specific numbers. You want to save that for the body paragraphs instead. Right? So remember, in test 2, just highlight the trends or the most outstanding, the most noticeable features without including any detailed figures or numbers. Number 3, please don't code the wrong data, either in numbers or units. Now, that's the reason why I asked you to spend some time at the beginning to analyze the graphics and look at the units of measurement, all right? Because repeated mistakes in this area is going to drag your score down significantly. So pay attention to the units and make sure that you code the data correctly. Number 4, try not to make basic grammar mistakes. So basic grammar mistakes might include, but are not limited to, a subject-verb agreement, the tenses, some very basic mistakes related to punctuation or spelling. Alright, so try to avoid, try to minimize those errors. Number 5, never write a conclusion in writing test 1. Now, writing test 1 doesn't ask for your opinions or your personal ideas. It just asks you to describe what you see in the chart, describe the figures and the numbers. So you should say your personal opinions and the conclusion for test 2. In test 1, an overview should suffice. Okay, so remember, no conclusion in the overview. Number 6, don't use contractions. Now, contractions are, for example, don't or doesn't or didn't or won't. Right? This is because contractions are considered informal, and so they are inappropriate in academic writing. So instead, try to write the full forms of the words. So if you mean as don't, so write do not, or instead of won't, you say will not, etc. Number 7, don't insert your personal comments or try to explain the data. Okay, so for example, you are given a chart and it's about employment rate. So don't write something like the employment rate has dropped significantly because of the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, if this is the reason whether or not the coronavirus has caused to reduce the employment rate, if it's not given in the chart, so you should include that detail, right? So your job is to describe the data as you see it without giving any background or try to explain the reason why. Okay, so never include any personal opinions or trying to give explanations for the data. Number 8, try not to use personal pronouns. For example, I, we, or they. Again, test 1 doesn't ask for your personal inputs, personal ideas or opinions. So, but instead you are asked to describe what you see, right? Report on what you see. So you should never use personal pronouns such as I, we, or they. And one way to avoid this is to use passive voice, right? As I mentioned earlier. And of course, you need to use passive voice appropriately and accurately. Number 9, never use informal language. So what are some of the examples of informal language? So idioms, informal phrasal verbs, and the slangs are considered inappropriate in academic writing, so you should avoid using such kinds of language. Okay, you're going to go for academic and formal one. Number 10, you should never write too many words. Now, by too many words here means somewhere more than 200 words. An ideal range I would recommend would be somewhere between 150 to 165 words. For the most part, quality is better than quantity, right? So the more you write, the more likely you are to make mistakes in terms of grammar, in terms of cohesion. Instead of like writing more words, you should spend more time refining your work. And this is not to mention that test 2 is worth twice as much as test 1. So you may want to spend more time catering for test 2. Right? So that's it for today. That's all for this video. I hope this is useful to you, and thank you very much for joining me. And before you leave, please comment down below one thing that you should do and one thing you shouldn't do in writing test 1. And also in the comment section, please include your name and your answer, and you get a chance to receive a free placement test code as well as tips from YOLA. For more information, please contact us. The number down here is 028-6285-8080, or you can visit us via our website at www.yola.vn. So stay tuned for more videos like this coming up, and I can't wait to see you in the next video. Bye.